We're going to look at, this evening, the story of Adam and Eve as it is the story of all of us. The Talmud, that great compendium of Jewish wisdom, asked the question, why indeed did God create Adam and Eve, two individuals? Why didn't he create a population, a nation, a community, a neighborhood of people? Why did he create two individuals? After all, to live as individuals is not natural, it's not the normal way. No one since then has lived that way. So if the intent was to create a country, a city, a community of people, why didn't God do that in the first place? Why did he start off with just two individuals and from there sprouted forth the entire world? So does anyone have a suggestion why? Why it would be better that way?
To distinguish the genders?
Distinguish the genders? But you could have a lot of guys and a lot of girls.
Yeah, but they're going to be two lots and they're symbolic of what's to come.
Okay, but you could still do that through communities. You could have a guy's
section and
a girl's section.
Build the Jewish nation.
Build the Jewish nation? So he could have done that in the first place, if that's what he wanted.
Well, it's difficult enough getting two to follow his one single law. How much more so a whole community if they can practice with one and then see if they can get it right.
Okay, so try it with one couple.
Yeah.
They stuffed it up, and so it was better. At least it wasn't a lot of people. Okay. Yeah.
But isn't it like also like the oneness of God, or like the idea of oneness? Because technically, although there are two, they came from one, so it's really just one person that God created.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting idea that there's one God, and so to reflect His oneness, He created two, but sort of one because it's a couple. Yeah.
But they weren't always one. I mean, there were always two. There was one.
They're originally one.
From one came another one.
Correct. One being that was
and
separated.
Then from those ones came more ones.
Right. So from oneness came many, but it stems from oneness, which is the oneness of God. Yeah?
All the actors of the brotherhood to get people to kind of encourage people now to look back and get over their foibles and just get on with it.
How we get over our foibles and why? What are you saying?
Acknowledging similarity and.
Okay. That's close to what the Talmud says. Not that the other answers weren't.
And the oneness also comes from the ground, and there's also Adam and the idea of being rooted, and of action and roots, and therefore of Hashem becoming at one within Adam, so that he acts out what Hashem wants.
Sure. That could be done with many people, not just with one. But what that suggestion is saying that, let's say it would be otherwise. This is what the Talmud says. Let's say God would have made many Adam and Eves, many couples, a whole community of people, and therefore we would all be descendants of one or the other. So then, what would invariably happen would be, I would say to you, my Adam and Eve were much better than your Adam and Eve. I come from a much more superior original couple than you do, and you would say, yours? You don't know where I come from. And we would look at each other differently. We would distinguish between each other because we're from different places, and we would compete where we came from. And so God made us all from the same couple. We all came from the exact same place. So none of us can claim that we have a greater pedigree or a superior heritage to anybody else. We all came from exactly the same couple. And so that should lead, like you said, to a sense of oneness, some type of common background that we all came from. There's some common denominator that we all share, and that is the same Adam and Eve, which would not have been the case had he created a nation or a group or even a family, and we'd be descended from different parts of it.
So that's the brotherhood of man.
Yeah. So that means that if indeed we all came from Adam and Eve, we all share that. So it must mean that if we really understand who Adam and Eve were, we're going to understand more about who we are. The fact that we all come from that same source, that same family, means that somewhere back down the track, many, many generations, we're all the same. And there is a commonality that we all share. And so therefore when the Torah tells us the story of Adam and Eve, it's not to tell us about a couple that lived many thousands of years ago in the Garden of Eden. It's to tell us about ourselves, something about ourselves. And by analysing, examining, studying, and digging into the story, we're going to gain a greater insight into our own psyche, our own self. And most particularly, Adam being the first man and Eve the first woman, suggests that there's something about Adam that he encapsulates masculinity, and Eve is the embodiment of femininity. That unlike all of us that came after Adam and Eve, Adam was pure man, Eve was total woman. They didn't have any other influence, any other compartments, parts to themselves that contributed to their psyches. They were created by God as man and woman. We, of course, coming after Adam and Eve, have many complicated influences in our lives. Every single human being is born from a man and a woman, unlike Adam and Eve, who were created by God. Every single one of us have influences that are both male and female, unlike Adam and Eve, who Adam was just him, a fully developed being without any influence, as Eve was. So, if we study Adam and Eve, we're going to get an insight into humanity as a whole, what is common to all of us. But more specifically, we're going to get some insight into what would a man be without any feminine influences whatsoever. What would a woman be without the male influences in her life? Which means, in that way, we're not going to really get a picture of any of us, because none of us are that. We are all a combination of both. But we're going to see, I guess, not what men and women are, but what masculinity is and what femininity is from Adam and Eve, because they were an untouched specimen by the outside influences. So therefore, it's a very important and worthy study to understand Adam and Eve.
What men have women like the X chromosome? Is that right? As opposed to women have 2 and men have X and Y.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So when a man has more feminine qualities, does that have nothing to do with the chromosome? Their X chromosome?
That you have to speak to a scientist about. I don't know. But my answer would be no. Nothing.
Right.
that each one of us, being born from a male and a female, have both male and female elements to ourselves. Most men are going to be mostly masculine.
Right.
Most women are going to be mostly feminine, and there are going to be exceptions to that, which is fine. But also that's our inborn nature, and also our influences, because we're influenced by both. So depending on our family structure and the teachers and role models we had growing up, and many other factors, we will develop our masculine and feminine sides to us. However, generally speaking, most men are going to be mostly male, and most women mostly female. And therefore, if we understand what male and female are from an Adam and Eve perspective, we might understand better why men behave in certain ways and women behave in different ways to men. Equally strange. Both men and women.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Good. With both parts of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
Therefore, it may take certain generalizations to have such a discussion, and saying, Adam is male, and women are more feminine as Eve is, but there's always going to be exceptions to that as well. But at least we're going to get to the core of masculinity and femininity by studying their story. So let's just remind ourselves of the story of Adam and Eve, because it is, on the first glance, it's a bit of a disappointing story. If this is the start to humanity, if this is what men and women are all about, then it doesn't bode very well for the future, because they didn't seem to do all that well. On a simplistic level, we read the story in Genesis. Adam and Eve were created on the 6th day of creation. the Talmudic tradition tells us that they were created as fully developed beings. They weren't created as babies who had to grow up. They were created as adults, 20-year-old adults, says the Midrash, the Talmudic tradition. Well, at age 20, a person is fully developed and mature. That's how they were created. And on the very first day of their creation, they were placed in the Garden of Eden, in a perfect world, a beautiful, divinely created world, with all their needs met, everything they could possibly dream of. They were in paradise, quite literally. And they were told to look after the Garden of Eden, and they were given one instruction. There was only one thing they were told not to do, and that was to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. There are many trees in the Garden of Eden that they're welcome to feed from. They can take what they want, but there's one tree called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They were forbidden to eat from that tree. Now, on the very day that they were told this, on that very Friday, the day of their creation, they succumbed and they did eat from the tree. As the book of Genesis relates, that the snake came to Eve and tempted her to eat from the fruit, which she did. And after eating it, she convinced her husband, Adam, to eat from it, which he did. And then God comes to them and tells them that you've done exactly what I told you not to do. As a result of this, you've brought death upon yourself and the world, suffering and pain. You are no longer going to live in this paradise. In the Garden of Eden, you're banished from it, and life is going to be tough from here on in. And that was the first day of creation. That was the beginning of humanity. Then they got on with life together, trying to sort out their issues. And we've been trying to ever since. That is the beginning of creation. Now, reading the story on its simplistic level is a little bit puzzling. First of all, just the message it seems to say is that humanity is quite doomed. We cannot get it right. If the first human beings, created by God in such a perfect state, couldn't get it right, and all they had to do was one simple thing, so then what hope is there for the rest of humanity to try and control ourselves and not do what we're not supposed to do? It's almost impossible to think that we're going to be any better than them. If you think about their scenario, their scene, they were created by God, instructed directly by God, they knew exactly what they needed to do, and yet they failed in that one test, that one thing they were told. Particularly if you think about the nature of the test, it doesn't seem all that hard to not eat a fruit. Like it doesn't seem such a deep temptation that to not eat this particular fruit. What's the big deal of that particular fruit? Why couldn't they just hold on? This is particularly puzzling when we add some of the Talmudic traditions that tell us that in actual fact the prohibition of eating this fruit was a temporary prohibition. It wasn't that they were never allowed to eat the fruit. They were going to be allowed to eat from the fruit. In fact, it was going to be a mitzvah, a good thing to eat from the fruit, just not that day. They would have been allowed to eat from the fruit on Shabbos, which was a few hours later. On the Friday that they were created, they were not supposed to eat from the fruit. But the Friday night, they were going to be allowed to eat from the fruit. They just had to wait till then. And they couldn't. They couldn't wait until then. They couldn't wait those few hours when the fruit would be permissible. This seems very disappointing. that the handiwork of God, human beings as they are in their purest form, without any negative influences, without bad upbringing, or living in a bad neighborhood, or issues that they have from their childhood. They don't have any of these things. And yet, they can't get it right. Two pure human beings can't get it right for a few hours. To just listen and do what you're told. And so, some would say that, yeah, that's the lesson. That we are destined to always rebel and go against what we're supposed to be doing. That we're innately bad and cursed and sinful. Yeah? No? Speak for yourself. Yeah?
So are you saying that the tree of good and evil yields an apple?
Where does the apple live?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. I certainly didn't say that. What fruit was it? It doesn't say in the Torah what fruit it was.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say.
No, it doesn't say.
It doesn't mention which fruit. It just says the fruit of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
There is a Talmudic discussion about what fruit it was,
Was it like a pomegranate?
and there are a few opinions. One opinion is that it was a grape,
Oh.
it was a vine. Others is that it was a fig. Another opinion is that it was wheat. It wasn't a tree, it was a sprouting of wheat.
Interesting.
Another opinion is that it was an etrog, citron. No opinion in Jewish tradition says it was an apple.
Yeah.
The apple is simply
Make believe.
not our idea. I think Michelangelo came up with it, or at least made it famous. But the apple is simply not one of our opinions.
Really, the
It
only one
was
that
a-
I knew.
Hmm?
It's the only one that I knew.
That's right. It's the best known opinion. It's not a Jewish tradition.
Did
Our
they
tradition.
know that they needed to only wait those few hours until Shabbos?
Yes, according to the Talmudic tradition, they knew that it was a temporary thing. They had to wait till Friday night.
It's like the well-known thing of putting kids in a room with lollies, and then all these tests have been done on behaviour. They think it points to resilience later on in life, depending on other factors as well, of course. And don't eat the lolly until I come back until you can eat it.
Right.
You see the kids battling with themselves and struggling whether to eat it, whether to not. And many children just succumb, and the others who find strategies, even moving away and lying on the floor to avoid it. And maybe this is what's the word I want, points to later on resilience
Yeah.
and ability.
But you wouldn't be surprised with
Innate.
kids doing that. But here we're talking about
Maybe
20-year-old.
done with adults, I think.
Yeah.
But wasn't it
But
also,
without all the issues that we have.
Wasn't Adam created first, and then he was lonely, and then from his rib Eve was created? So therefore showing something else, that man needed woman, and man had a longing to share his experience.
Well, that's another point which we'll get to because that just makes it more puzzling. What were you going to say?
isn't the idea that there, like, the difference between the word touch and eat taste, like, that there were, like, levels of what you could and couldn't do with the tree, and that's where it became tricky?
It still doesn't really explain how they could stuff up so badly. And yeah,
How were they instructed not to eat the apple?
God,
Or
not
to eat the fruit?
the fruit. God told them. God said, all the fruits you can eat, not this one. He told them straight out.
Can you explain how this would have been, had God done something like that?
Just like a prophecy, like God spoke to them directly. They were holy. Like for them, God speaking to them was totally normal. That was they were God's creation, totally in tune with the divine. They conversed with God. Just to throw an extra spanner in the works, Eve's role in this whole thing is also very puzzling, because she was the one who instigated it, at least on the human realm. The snake, who traditionally the snake represents the voice of evil, told her to eat. God had told her not to, and the snake told her, why not, try it. And she listened to the snake, she ate, and then she got her husband to eat as well. And so, really, it seems like it's all her fault. Like, she seemed to introduce this failing, this mistake, and couldn't keep it to herself, but convinced the husband to as well. That if I'm going down, he's going down with me. And that seems odd as well. Particularly when we take into account the only information we have about Eve before this. There's nothing we know about Eve other than that she was created. The only thing we know about her was that she was created. Why?
To
Yeah, how
save
they get
on his own.
To be a helpmate,
A
we help
helpmate,
with the
yes.
benefit.
As a help against him. As a help against him. So, in the beginning of creation, God looked at his creation and he said it was good. Everything was good in creation. There was only one thing that he labeled as not good, and that was man being alone.
Sorry.
A man being alone is not good. Okay, for us it's obvious, but this is the beginning of creation.
I agree.
That that a man being alone is not good. That was the only thing that was labeled as not good by God. And so he said, therefore, I'm going to create him a help against him. Against him meaning that complements him, that is his opposite, but that will help him. And now, okay, this statement has often been taken as quite belittling, like she's just a helper. That's all Eve is. But however we explain that, that's all we know about Eve. She's there to help. And what did she do? Call that helping?
But he is a help if he would be able to choose. He can choose not to eat from the apple. So tempting him doesn't mean that he has to. That's a great challenge to see how strong you are.
So you're absolutely right that the fact that Eve made the mistake doesn't mean he had to make the mistake as well.
No. If she's helping him actually
But
acknowledge the fact that he can choose and follow.
Okay,
Basic
so
instructions.
But it's like there are two sides, like two coins of the medallion. One is like the evil, the too much love or too much resilience to do whatever you want, and the other one is holding back. So bringing the two together, then they would become the perfect one.
But we'll have to understand how she's helping. How is she being a help? It seems that she is the one who ruined it all. Not taking any responsibility away from him. He's also responsible for his actions, but she's the one that started it. And so here's the helper, and this is what she does. It's so puzzling. And if you actually read through the verses, just one by one, read through the verses, they're such a non sequitur. They don't follow from each other. They don't make any sense. It's like it says one thing, and then the next thing seems to contradict it. It's the most puzzling story that there is. And so this, by the way, is typical of any Torah literature. All of our Torah is this way. You expect it to go one way, and it goes a different way. It just doesn't follow ever. It always doesn't make sense. And anyone who's studied Torah has the frustrating experience of reading it and saying, what is it talking about? Why is it saying in this way? What does it mean? Why is it describing things in this way? It just simply doesn't make sense. And many people stop there. They read it doesn't make sense, and so they move on to something else because they don't understand it. We as the Jewish people are very blessed with a rich tradition of explanation of the Torah, of picking between the lines and extrapolating the inner message behind it. And so, therefore, our way of studying is that we read it makes no sense to us, which is a call to go deeper. We're being invited to look beneath the surface because there's no way you can accept it on its face value. It just doesn't make any sense. You have to go deeper into it. And indeed, our tradition goes into this story extremely deeply to show that there is something much more powerful going on in this interaction between Adam and Eve. There's something very powerful and special happening here. And none of it can be taken simply. We can't simply dismiss Adam and Eve as being typical humans with human weakness that just make a mistake. It's too simplistic. It's not a satisfying explanation to how the ultimate human beings created by God could make such a big mistake so quickly and so inexplicably. There must be something more going on here. So it must be that what they did was somehow on some level a necessary step. It had to happen. It couldn't have been any other way. The fact that Adam and Eve ate from the fruit was in the plans. It was going to happen. But it had to happen in this particular way. It had to happen through Eve. She had to be the one to come up with the idea because she was the one that was there to help Adam, after all. And so therefore the fact that she came up with the idea was her part in the story. And Adam followed her because he knew that she was there to help him. And there's something much more going on here.
Something to do with the choice, and he had to make the choice between divine and God and the higher power and his partner, and he chose the partner.
Okay. Could be, yeah. If you have to choose between God and your partner, you choose your partner. Yeah, could be. The question is, what did she see? What was her understanding? Why did she come up with this idea? So, in looking at it deeper, in the Kabbalistic writings, there's a tendency to identify the fruit as one of the above that was mentioned. The Talmud goes through, there could be a fig, it could be a grape, it could be wheat, it could be an etrog. In the Kabbalistic writings, there's a tendency to go for the grape, that it was a grape. And what it says in one of the writings of Kabbalah, that had Adam and Eve not eaten from the fruit, they would have made Kiddush on Friday night on the grape of the tree of knowledge. That just like we every Friday night over a cup of wine make a prayer sanctifying the Shabbos called Kiddush, so too Adam and Eve would have made Kiddush that Friday night on the grape of tree of knowledge had they waited. But they ate it unripe. They ate it before its time. They didn't wait. That's what it says in the Kabbalistic writings. And in fact, we're told that we make Kiddush on Friday night to try and correct and reverse their mistake. That's why we make Kiddush on Friday night. That's what the Kabbalah says. Now, to understand why particularly the grape was favoured by the Kabbalists as being the fruit, even though it could have been any fruit, or at least any of the ones listed, we have to understand a little bit deeper into Adam and Eve and their psyche and why they looked at things differently. The persona of Adam and Eve, like I mentioned earlier, is masculinity and femininity in its pure essence, in its purest form, without any adulteration or dilution. And what that means is that from a Kabbalistic perspective, masculine energy is transcendent, feminine energy is immanent. Transcendence and immanence are masculine and feminine. What does that mean? Masculine energy is transcendent, which means masculinity is more removed, aloof, detached. Whereas feminine energy is immanent, which means it is more present, within, and conscious. That the difference between male energy and female energy is in its sense of presence. That male energy is detached and aloof, female energy is within and connected. Or putting it slightly differently, that masculine energy is more objective, feminine energy is more subjective. Masculinity is where things are theoretical, feminine energy is where things are real, things are actual. This can be translated into men and women, to a great extent. So it's a generalization, and all generalizations are wrong. Which is a generalization.
I'll just ask you something there.
One second. So, but we can see it in certain examples of the way men and women work. That men are more likely to experience things in a more theoretical, removed way. Women are more likely to be more involved and connected to what's going on. Of course, there are many exceptions to this, and have I said that before? I've got to be careful. But generally speaking, this will be the case. I'll give you an example. Often, I am in the position of giving a lecture or a class, and sometimes I talk about things such as men and women. The way men or women come out of a class or experience a class is quite different. Men will come out of a class about men and women saying that that was very interesting. They'll use words like interesting, fascinating. Those type of words that describe it as a topic, as a subject that like they either found relevant or not relevant, they connected or not connected. It's not anything personal. It's a topic that was either interesting or boring. Whereas women will come out with it saying it's so true or not true. Like it's more that they've applied it to something. It wasn't just a subject that they heard, it was something that they took personally. Also, if I found that if I make generalization about men, they don't tend to take it personally. And I can say the most insulting things about men, and they simply don't take it personally. So I can say that men are completely detached, aloof, uncaring, cold, and like they're beings that have no heart and no feelings. And the women get upset. But the guys think, I don't think he's an idiot or whatever, but they don't take it personally. If I would say similar things about women, they're more likely to take it personally, which is why I don't. Now, is the one better than the other? No, not at all. It's two different ways of hearing things. A detached person, and again, a woman can be this way or a man can be the other way. It could switch around very easily. But I'm generalizing. That a detached person hears the subject as a subject. The connected person, the involved person, hears it as you're talking about me. And so when I generalize about men and women, a couple will listen to it, and when they go out, she will say, he was talking about me. And he will say, he was talking about her. He won't take it personally. That's masculine energy. The power of masculinity is to be removed, is to not put yourself in the picture, which has a certain advantage. It has a power to it. That ability to stay objective on the outside and view it, it has a power to it. The feminine power is to be present and involved in the moment, to actually experience it for what it is, to be there, to take it personally, to take it in. That is a great power as well, and also necessary. If you live your life detached and removed, so then that's a very lonely life. It's not good for man to be alone. That's what God said. That loneliness, which is masculinity, is not good. Is a detached, disconnected life. It's one where you don't experience anything. You don't let anything touch you. It's a very protected, safe place where nothing's going to hurt you, but nothing's going to touch you either. You're not involved in anything. That's not good. And so the feminine power is to come in and make a connection, to connect. For this reason, masculinity leads to loneliness, femininity leads to connectedness, which means that at the core of the male identity is a loner, somebody who wants to just be on their own. And in some ways it's unnatural for the male to be in a relationship. At the core of the feminine identity is a relationships being, as a being who connects. And it's unnatural for her not to be connecting with others. She's not in her element. This is illustrated by Adam and Eve. Adam was created alone. Eve was created as his partner. There was no point that Eve was alone. It's just not her thing. Adam was alone, and he reverts back to his loneliness. He has to be beckoned out of it, whereas she is naturally a part of a connection, of a relationship, and it's against her grain not to be, which again is why, generally speaking, translating to men and women, that a woman will have a greater sense of relationship than a man. There can be a healthy relationship that is going along fine, but there's something missing in the relationship. They haven't connected for a long time. They're like two ships passing in the night. They're coexisting, nothing bad happening, but there hasn't been real connection going on for a while. There hasn't been a real deep sense of bonding going on. One of them is probably going to notice it before the other one in the relationship. One of them is probably going to say to the other one, I feel like we haven't spent any time together. I feel like we haven't connected for a while. And the other one will say, what do you mean? We spent plenty of time together. And one, I'm not saying which, will say but we never spent any time together. And the other one will say, we just spent the whole day together. We've been together for a whole week. What are you talking about? Now, I don't want to generalize, but often it'll be she will pick up on the lack of connection, and he just didn't even notice it. Because loneliness is at the core of the male identity. And it's something that he's comfortable with. It's not good for him. It's not good for a man to be alone, but he's comfortable with it. It's safe for him. Whereas for her, it's unnatural. She's there to help him, to bring him out of that, to bring him into connectedness. And so she will probably be the one that picks it up more than him. Now again, there are some men that have a very strong feminine side, and there are some women who are very masculine. And so there will be some women who don't pick that up and men who do. But generally, most of the time, most men will be more loners. Most women will be more connectors. There are a few questions, so I want to take a few
Well,
questions.
you answered what I was.
Okay, good. Any others? So Adam and Eve being male and female, unadulterated, unplugged, total 100%, two different corners, Adam completely male and Eve completely female, their experience of reality is going to be very different. And their understanding of what is the right way is going to be very different. Adam understood that our mission in life is to be as detached as possible. That we are here to try to not become attached to this world, to our lives, to ourselves, to anyone around us. We're here to fulfill God's mission, to do what God wants us to do, without getting involved, without getting in the way. To be completely egoless, transparent, and serving a higher purpose, and nothing more than that. And so, for Adam, it was very simple. God's mission for us is to look after the garden, to not eat from the fruit, and we'll be fine. Just listen to what he said and don't mix anything else in. That was his view of things. And that's because he was male, uncompromised, which is detachedness. Not putting yourself in there. Not experiencing anything. It's not about experience. It's about just doing what you need to do without mixing in. Eve saw things differently. Eve was coming from the feminine perspective of being involved. Eve could not understand that it's possible for God to create us to be non-entities, to be non-beings. We must be here in this world to experience what it means to be in this world, to actually experience being alive. And that experience means being somewhat subjective, not totally objective. To be involved in this world, to be connected to this world. Being connected to this world means being disconnected from God to some extent. It does mean that. But surely Eve understood that was the reason why we were created. To be in a world that is good and evil. And through our own devices, with our own struggles, and with our own inner battle, choose good over evil. Not simply to be good automatically, but to experience the opposite of good and to choose good. To be involved and connected to this world. To actually have a feeling of self and to give that feeling of self over to God. Which is a totally different approach to Adam's. Adam's approach is that leave yourself out of the picture. Just stay out of the way. It's not about you. Eve is saying, no, it is about us. It's about us connecting to God. God wants a relationship with us. Again, Eve understood the relationship idea. That God wants a relationship. To have a relationship, he wants it with real people who have real struggles. Adam didn't see the relationship side. He saw the loneliness side. God just wants to be God. And it should only be God. And we should not get in the way of that oneness of God. Two very different theologies that they had. Very different ways of looking at things.
Was Adam's perspective at all, what do we think he was in terms of, did he want to serve Hashem, just not get involved so much? Or was it just that he was just, I don't know, what do we think he was doing?
His idea was that God created the world for us to serve him, for us to fulfill his purpose, his mission. How do we do that? By staying out of the way. By simply serving his purpose. So if it's not eating the tree, from the tree, you don't eat from the tree. You just do exactly what he says. Which of course makes a lot of sense. But Eve said, but that can't be the whole picture. It can't be all just for us to stay out of the way. If God wanted us to stay out of the way, he didn't have to create us in the first place. He could have left us out of the way. The fact he put us in the way means that there's something we need to experience and overcome. God wants us to have an ego and to overcome that ego.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
How could Adam have become just as he was a holy man if all he was doing was just following rules without any depth of feeling for these rules or for what they mean? He was just following. It seems that he would have needed the feminine side in order to have become the great Hocham or the great tzaddik that he really was.
That's a feminine perspective.
Sorry.
That's what Eve was saying.
Together.
That's what Eve was saying.
Neither one nor the other alone is correct.
So
but together, they become more important.
Yeah. So that's a relationship. That's coming together. That's Eve's language. In Adam's language, he's saying, well, it's all about God. It's not about us. It's about God being revealed in the world. God wants to be revealed in this world. So we just have to stay out of the way, and that will happen.
But there has to be an individual connection. How else can you do it?
You know Mark Twain?
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Diaries of Adam and Eve, where he says it's as if he discovered, like in some archaeological site, a diary written by Adam and Eve about their experiences. And it's a very humorous, cute, very short book. And in it, it has each one, Adam and Eve, recording their experiences and complaining about each other, and totally not understanding each other. And one of the things that Adam complains about is that Eve keeps using this word "we." And he doesn't understand it. What is this word? Where did she get it from? What's it about? Like, it wasn't in his language, so where did she get this word "we" from? That's what it is. That Adam doesn't understand the we, what working together, making a partnership. What are you talking about? It's about God and nothing else. It's about revealing God, so just stay out of it. Eve is saying, no, if that's all it was, then God wouldn't need the whole world. He was alone before. If he wanted to be alone, he could stay that way. He wants us to participate in it. But the only way we can participate is by becoming more subjective, by losing somewhat our divine connection and lowering ourselves into the world. And so Eve's suggestion was that we actually have to eat this fruit. We have to know good and evil. To know good and evil means to become subjective, to be involved in the struggles of this world. That was her suggestion.
Hadn't Adam kind of already connected to the world? Like, he named all the animals and he named everything and seen all the plants and like... She had an unfair advantage in the sense that you put the person who's supposed to be the connector on the earth and say, sorry, he's already kind of connected to the earth. Like, I feel like if you named everything, you kind of forbranked all the animals.
What does it mean that he named all the animals? That he recognized the divine source within everything. Giving it its name was identifying the spiritual energy behind each thing.
That's not connecting with it?
No, it's connecting it to God. It's saying this is connected to God in this way, so it's called that. And the name of a thing is a description of its spiritual energy, of its divine connection. That he saw. But he didn't connect to them. It says specifically that he named all these animals, but he didn't connect to any of them. Then was when Eve was given to him. Because he was not connecting to the world. That was not what it was about. It was about God being in the world.
I thought it was that they were too animalistic and he needed something more spiritual, and that's why he was created. Was to connect spiritually, not physically, or like in the animal soul.
No, it wasn't that Eve was just a better partner than animals. It was that there was no connection there. There was no such thing as connection. It wasn't possible. So it was specifically this fruit that the Kabbalists identify as being the grape.
Sorry, so then why was Chava created? Are we getting that?
Well, she was a help. She was supposed to help him.
I see.
So we'll see. So it was the grape, the fruit of the grape, the wine that they were supposed to drink. Because wine does have the power of accentuating emotion and feeling. You become more feeling, more. This is in moderation. More connected, more open. When you, that's right. When with wine, and so Eve said, we need to drink it. We need to connect to it. Not to wait until Shabbos. If you wait until Shabbos is the holy day where the divine light is so revealed in the world that there is no good and evil, there is no struggle, there is no ego. So drinking wine on Shabbos, that's not going to do it. We have to drink it before Shabbos. We have to do it in the way that God said not to. Even though God said not to do it, Eve said, but he really means we should do it. Which to Adam was ridiculous. to the male way of thinking, you say what you mean. But to Eve, it made a lot of sense that God said it, but he meant something else. He wanted us to do it on our own. He wanted us to figure it out. So he spoke in code language. So Adam was in this position. Who does he listen to? Does he listen to God, or does he listen to his wife? And he had to conclude that he would listen to her, because she was given to him to help him, which means that she has some insight that he doesn't have. She has some deeper connection, deeper sense of what their mission is. That's how she's supposed to help him. After all, what else could she help him with? If God tells Adam, I'm giving her to you to help you. To help him do what? What was she supposed to help him with? Do the dishes? They didn't have dishes. To do the laundry, they were naked. What was she supposed to being a helpmate?
Spiritual, to grow.
So obviously, the woman as a helpmate is not belittling her as a house help. Like it's saying that she is the helper to realize and actualize the real mission, the real purpose of existence. Because she has a deeper insight than he does. She understands what a relationship is. In the order of creation, we see it's in ascending order, going from the inanimate to the vegetable, to the animal, to the human. That it's going in the order of creation was in ascending order. And the woman was after the man, because she has an insight, a deeper insight, a higher sense that the man doesn't have. And so he could not listen to her. It wouldn't have made any sense not to listen to her. And so what happened at that moment was that the human psyche changed. That we became self-conscious in a way that we weren't before. The knowledge of good and evil means that we're now involved in the struggles of life, not removed. It's not an Adam world anymore, it's an Eve world. It's not the Adam's aloof world where we're separate and we look at things totally objectively. We've now become subjectively involved in the struggles of this world. But that is how it's supposed to be. It couldn't have been any other way. Eve got it right. She got it right by going against what God said. And on a simple level, we have to read it as doing what God said not to do. Because to disconnect from God can't be something that God says to do. It has to be something He says not to do. He can't tell us to disconnect from Him. But with her sense, she understood that this was necessary. And what's amazing is that at the end of all that, it seems that Adam appreciated this. Adam appreciated that Eve introduced something that he would never figured out on his own. In fact, when God comes to them, and it says that God looked for Adam and Eve and they were hiding from God. And He asks, why are you hiding? And Adam says, because we realize that we're naked. And so God says, how did you realize that? Have you eaten from the fruit that I told you not to eat from? Well, they didn't realize they were naked before. And now they realize they were naked. But before they didn't have self-consciousness. There was no sense of self. That wasn't a part of their psyche. It was only when Eve said, no, we have to become self-conscious. We have to become aware of ourselves. That they understood that they were naked. That they felt the sense that they were naked. Before that, it just wasn't a relevant thing. Self was not relevant. It was an Adam world, not an Eve world, where self is just not in the picture. So naked, not naked, it just didn't matter. Now they became self-aware, so they were aware that they were naked. And so God said, so you've eaten from the fruit. And so God says, did you eat from the fruit that I told you not to eat from? So what was Adam's response to that?
The woman made me
She
do it.
made me.
The woman made me do it, but that's not exactly his words. His exact words are, the woman that you gave me made me eat. So he's blaming God. Now in it he's hinting at the reason why he listened to the woman and not to God. Because it was the woman that you gave me. Why did you give me this woman? As a help. That's why she was created, to help me. That she has the insight that I don't have. That she has a sense of what our mission is that I couldn't figure out on my own. So the woman you gave me told me to eat. That's why I ate. He wasn't passing the buck, he was giving her the credit. He was making it clear that she was the one who had that insight, not him. And so the result was that, okay, you've made that choice, so that means you've become mortal. And you will have pain and difficulty, and you'll have struggles, and things will not come easy. You're no longer perfect beings with no ego, you're now imperfect beings with a real sense of self. And therefore, you're going to struggle. Is that a punishment? Is that a curse? On a simple level, yes. But compared to living in paradise without any pain or suffering or death, it sounds pretty bad. But in a way, no. In a way, it means that you're going to have a life that's real now. Living in paradise forever without any problems is not real. There's no achievement there. There's no contribution that you make to the world. There's nothing to overcome. It's sad, but the reality is that it's only going through the pain and difficulty of life as we do that we actually become real beings. And it's the majesty of the human being that we're able to go through what we go through and come out still with a sense of mission and positivity. Still with a sense that we're here for a reason and that we can do good. We can contribute and we can make other people happy even if we're going through difficult times. That's the true power and majesty of being human, which could not have been there if life would be perfect. There'd just be nothing for us to give. And so it wasn't so much a curse, the death and pain and suffering, mortality. It wasn't so much a curse as the consequence, the choice that they'd made to be beings that are connected to real life. And so that's why, after all of that, after being told all the punishments that they're going to get as a result of this choice that Eve convinced Adam to make, Adam turns around and he gives her her name. Until now she hadn't had a name. Eve had not been named yet. It was Adam who gave her her name, Eve.
Had he been named?
Nice. Chava.
And what is the name Eve? What does it mean?
Chava, experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it means it's from life, from the word to live. Chava is from the same root as chai, to experience, to live, to actually be, to be present. And he said that she is the mother of all life. That Eve was the one that introduced to the world life, like real life, living, engaging, connecting. Something that Adam never would have figured out on his own. And so you would think, if this is the person who convinced him to eat from the fruit, got cursed by God and kicked out of the Garden of Eden and ruined everything for the rest of time. So if now he's choosing a name for her, you think about a few other names that he could have come up with for her. And he turns to her and says that you're the mother of all life. He says to her, now I appreciate the insight that you've brought. That life is about really connecting, really being present, with all the struggles that brings, and to have actually a real existence.
Rabbi, did he know his name at that stage? At what stage did he get his name? From the very beginning?
So it seems that his name is a generic name.
Mm-hmm.
Adam just means man. Chava doesn't mean woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, because his essence is a generic one. It's not about me. It's not me having a name and an identity and a personality. And it's not what it's about. I was taken from the ground. I mean, Adam means from the dust, from the ground, which means total egolessness. That was his essence. Whereas Eve is about being alive, having a name, having an identity, being a person. Now, Eve, if she would be left alone, would lose the insight of Adam, which is to be nullified, to be egoless as well, to transcend ego. It's not as if Eve on her own would be fine, because then if all you're about is about being you and your identity and experiencing and being present, that becomes self-focused. You need the Adam insight as well, which is removed and nullified and transcendent, to go beyond self. But that alone would be total loneliness. It was Eve that brought him literally down to earth. And so this does give us some insight into the male and female energies that we've all inherited. And it also gives us an insight into what's at the core of the struggle of being human. That on the one hand, we have in us an Adam urge, an Adam urge to be nothing, to nullify ourselves, to transcend and to be beyond, to be egoless. We have in us this urge. We actually don't want to be something. We want to be nothingness in front of God. We want to simply serve a higher purpose. It's an urge that we do have. We also have a strong urge of somethingness, of selfness, of being. And neither one on their own can really survive. The urge to nothingness could be total self-negation. The urge to somethingness could become total self-absorption. It's when Adam and Eve marry, when you have the two visions, that the only reason I've been made into a self is so I can take myself and transcend. I can take it to be higher, to connect it to God. The only reason I was given an ego was in order to, with my own free choice, with my own personality and flair and my own way to connect to that which is higher than me. Not to be stuck in self, but to transcend self. When you marry the two, then you have real life. Then you're really alive, and you're alive with purpose. That's Adam and Eve. Yeah, you had a question.
It seemed you were saying that obviously that you've got to marry the two, and Adam's right. But in the decision to eat, where Eve had the insight, it seemed like the male was quite passive and kind of did what he made a decision to do what he was, to follow his wife. That decision was based on Hashem making her for him. But it just seemed like really, where did his quality come in to balance out her quality?
Well, I think his quality was what started, or what was there in the beginning. The Garden of Eden was an Adam world of just nullification, egolessness. That's how things started.
So she was balancing out him.
Yeah, he was the nothing
Yeah.
who comes before the something, which was her. So she was introducing somethingness. That you got to be a something.
Yeah.
But his nothingness is what keeps her somethingness from getting lost in ego and maintaining a connection to the nothingness where it came from. She needs him too.
Yeah.
The guys are not useless completely. There is some function.
So women are neshama be'emit? Are we supposed to get offended? Just as a symbol? The neshama be'emit and neshama elohim.
You could even say, if you want to be even more insulting, that or more dramatic about it, that the woman is the body and the man is the soul. You could say it that way. And the Kabbalah says that actually uses that metaphor and says that the soul brings that sense of transcendence. The body is presence. And ultimately, the body is actually higher than the soul. The body has a higher insight than the soul has. Because the soul is just an expression of God's light. The body is an expression of God's essence, which is beyond his light. But that can only be revealed when the soul comes into the body. When the soul shines into the body, then the body's higher source is revealed, and that's the feminine power. Which is why physicality is a much more feminine attribute. The physical world, the aesthetic, is a feminine thing, because the feminine soul can see the beauty in that. It's not a contradiction. But that's maybe a topic for another lecture. Yeah.
And where does the snake fit?
Ego.
No, I'm saying if it's so beautifully given from Eve that she saw this better world and this living, and I love this, it sounds awesome for women's rights, but then there was the snake.
Right. So, even for the woman, for her to entertain the idea of doing that which God said not to do, after all, she was also created by God as a totally divine being. So for her to even come up with the idea to do something that God said not to do, took an outside negative force, which is what the snake represented. The snake represented the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, personified, because they didn't have an evil inclination within them. There was no evil within them. So how could she even come up with an idea of doing something against God's will? It had to be introduced from the outside. But once it was introduced, she could see why that might be necessary to do. If the snake would have gone to Adam, he would have said, "Get out of here, why would I listen to you? God told me what to do." Like, you're a snake, like, what are you talking for anyway? It wouldn't have made any sense. Coming to Eve, because Eve had this ability to sense self, so it made sense to her that it might be necessary to listen to what the snake said and not to what God said. But it had to be introduced by somebody else. Eve could not have come up with this on her own, because she's also a creation of God Like she is also a perfect being that wouldn't naturally go against God's word.
And it extends up to the connect thing. It's sort of that sort of thing of engaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But how can you say that the snake is the evil inclination? Because what you're saying is this it was the perfect plan, and so the snake was also a divine creature, and therefore the snake's role was to make sure that Eve ate from the fruit. And so it shouldn't really be that the snake is the evil inclination.
Okay, so from a Kabbalistic perspective, that is exactly what the evil inclination is. The evil inclination is an angel of God, whose job it is to try and draw us away from doing the right thing, in order that we shouldn't listen. Like that's really what the evil inclination is. There's no in Judaism. There's no sense of Satan or evil being some outside force, a counter force against God. There is nothing outside of God. Evil is a servant of God. And so the snake is like a very concrete depiction of the force of evil, the voice of evil, telling us to do what God told us not to do. In those times, it was an external force. After they ate from the fruit, they knew good and evil internally, so that you didn't need a snake. It was inside us. It's a force within inside us. But even now, our own evil inclination, our own inner voice that tells us to do the wrong thing, where's that coming from? It's also coming from God. It's a servant of God. Just its job is to be overcome, from our perspective. In fact, the Zohar says that the evil inclination itself wants us not to listen. Is hoping we won't listen to it. Its job is to tempt us, but hoping not to be successful.
But the snake's job was to make sure that she listened or not. If that was the plan, then she needed to listen to the negative, to the evil inclination.
Yeah. Ultimately, that was going to happen. That was the right thing to happen. But the snake's not in on the big plan. The snake just knows its part in the plan. And that is to try and tempt to do the wrong thing.
So the wrong thing is sometimes the right thing.
In this particular case it was, because they had no inner evil in them, so the fact that Eve had a tendency to do it could not have come from evil within her. After that event, we have evil in us. And so for us to do the wrong thing is because we're doing the wrong thing. It's not coming from a pure place, necessarily. Having said that, the Kabbalists do say that after the fact, once it's happened and you've done the wrong thing, there is somehow cosmically a reason why that had to happen as well. After the fact. You can't say this before it's happened to make the choice to do evil because, well, if God doesn't want it, it wouldn't happen. You can't do that. Once it has happened, retroactively, it had to happen for whatever reason. And the Kabbalists do say that about every evil, not just the Garden of Eden. Yeah.
If you say that the soul is the male and the body is the female, how does that work with the afterlife? I'm just going to extrapolate what you said because it's a big question mark with me. Because I don't know how you put those two together.
Okay, so it's very important to explain that both men and women have soul and body. Yeah? And so and just like both men and women have male and female aspects to us. Right? So therefore the afterlife is the world of the soul. And we all have souls, so we all get there. Yeah?
You're saying it's for the greater good that she did it. Then why was her punishment so severe?
Well, like I said, is it actually a punishment?
Have you done anything to help her? Yeah, but
that was the choice she made. That an achievement will take pain and work. It's like there's no birth that doesn't come with pain. Like that was the choice she made.
Should his punishment have been equal?
yeah. Or his
Well,
midlife experience.
It depends what you're. If you're calling it a punishment, yeah. But we're saying it's not a punishment. So it's living. It's life. It's connection to life.
Should his connection be more tangible?
Yeah.
Well, what was his punishment?
We should work the land.
that he's gonna, it's gonna be tough to make a living. He's gonna be haunted and go crazy to make a living.
So that's constant, and we have one-off.
Yeah, and you have epidurals.
And you forget. No,
It exists. We don't have
time, maybe for now.
Yes, I'm just joking. So, I mean, if you speak to somebody who has had it, they'll do it again, and they'll say that pain is totally worth the end result. Like you can't possibly even compare the end result of life coming into the world to the temporary pain that.
If she hadn't done that, wouldn't she still bring children into the world without pain?
Yeah, and life would not be appreciated. Like there would be just no pain, no suffering, there'd be no death. Imagine you live forever. Imagine it for a moment. Imagine there was no death, you live forever. Would there be any reason to do anything today? Like, we'll do it in 1,000 years. Why should I do it now? Like, what's the rush? There'd be no reason to do anything. And if something happened to you, would there there'd be no experience. There'd be no life. It sounds wonderful. It's not.
Yeah,
real.
but it wouldn't be even us. It would still be Adam and Eve.
Well, they would have had children. They were told to be fruitful and multiply. But just there's no death. So like, there'd be no sense of life.
That idea of there being two trees, where one was the tree of life and the
That
other.
the Torah says there was a tree of life and the tree of knowledge. That's
Okay.
in the.
And that was later on.
And that's there in the
So
story.
then, okay. Yeah, but it was only the tree of knowledge was in the middle of the garden, and then the tree of life was introduced afterwards?
Well, it was there as well.
Okay.
It was also there. And had they eaten from it, then they would have lived forever with their evil, and so evil would have been perpetuated. So they had to leave the garden. Okay, we'll start there, God willing, next week. We'll continue our discussion on Adam and Eve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.